Every man has been lied to about what masculinity actually is, not by enemies, by people who were themselves lied to. And the lie has been running so long and so completely that most men are now performing a version of manhood that is slowly destroying them while believing that the performance itself is the proof of their strength. Carl Jung spent 60 years mapping what genuine masculinity looks like from the inside. And what he found will make everything you were taught make sense for the first time, and make most of it completely unrecognizable. The man you were told to be is not a man, he is a function. He shows up, he provides, he does not complain, he does not need. He does not crack under pressure or show fear, or admit that the weight he is carrying is heavier than he can comfortably hold. He is reliable the way a machine is reliable, consistent the way a tool is consistent, and he is praised for this, called strong, called a real man. Given the social approval that comes with being exactly what the environment requires, without asking anything in return. And inside he is disappearing. Not dramatically, not in ways anyone would notice. In the specific way that a person disappears when they have been performing a role for so long that the distance between the performance and the actual self becomes so large that crossing it feels impossible. He does not know what he feels, not really. He knows what he is supposed to feel, and he knows what he is allowed to express, and he has become so skilled at managing the gap between those two things that the management itself has become invisible to him. He is not suppressing his emotions, he has forgotten he has them. He has confused the suppression with the absence. He has mistaken the silence for depth when it is actually just silence. That man is not masculine. He is domesticated, and there is a profound difference between those two things that nobody in his formation ever taught him to see. Jung identified the first truth about genuine masculinity that the modern world cannot say out loud. Strength is not the absence of darkness. Strength is the ownership of it. Every man has a shadow, not a metaphor. A precise psychological reality. The accumulated weight of every part of himself that was pushed underground because the surface could not accommodate it. The rage that was too inconvenient, the fear that felt incompatible with the image he was building. The need for connection that felt too vulnerable to admit. The grief he never processed because processing it would have required him to stop functioning, and stopping was never an option. The hunger for meaning, for depth, for something real beneath the performance, that had no legitimate channel, and so went underground where it has been building pressure ever since. That shadow is not weakness. It is information. It is the most honest part of him, the part that has refused to pretend, refused to perform, refused to accept the substitutes he has been offered for the real thing, and the man who has never met it is not in control of himself. He believes he is, he presents himself as if he is. But the shadow operates from below the level of conscious decision-making, and it produces the behavior he cannot explain afterward. The explosion that arrived with more force than the situation warranted. The self-destruction that appeared from nowhere at the exact moment things were going well. The pattern that repeats across different relationships and different contexts with different people, because the pattern is not about them. It is about him, about the part of him that has never been examined and therefore cannot be governed. The masculine man is not the man without darkness. He is the man who has turned around and looked at his darkness directly, who has sat with his rage and asked what it is actually carrying, who has felt his fear without immediately converting it into aggression or avoidance, who has acknowledged his need without performing indifference to it, who has done the one thing the world told him real men do not do, gone inward, honestly, without the escape routes, and found there not weakness but the most precise and powerful self-knowledge available to a human being. A man who knows his shadow cannot be controlled by it. A man who does not know his shadow is operated by it constantly while believing he is making free choices. The difference between those two men is visible to everyone in the room the moment either of them enters it. Here is the second truth nobody told you: discipline without self-knowledge is not strength, it is suppression with better marketing. The self-improvement world has sold men a version of masculinity built entirely on output. Wake up at 5, train your body, master your habits. Eliminate weakness through sheer force of consistent effort. Build the life that demonstrates to the world, and to yourself, that you are not the soft, undisciplined version of a man that you fear you might be. And there is real value in this. Discipline is real, consistency is real, the body matters, the habits matter. But discipline applied to a self that has never been examined does not produce a masculine man. It produces a highly functional machine that is running on suppression rather than genuine strength. And the difference between those two things becomes visible the moment the discipline fails. Because genuine strength does not fail the way suppression fails, genuine strength bends without breaking. Suppression holds until it does not hold, and then it does not hold at all, in direct proportion to how long and how completely it was maintained. This is why the most catastrophic collapses always come from the men who appeared most disciplined. The man who preached restraint and was consumed by what he could not restrain. The man who built an impeccable external life and destroyed it systematically from the inside. The man who had everyone fooled, including himself. Until the moment the structure gave way, and what had been accumulating underneath it came through all at once. Jung called this enantiodromia, the tendency of anything pushed to an extreme to become its opposite. Too much rigid control produces not more control but its precise opposite, the sudden and total loss of it. Because the psyche is not a machine that runs better with more suppression, it is a living system that seeks balance. And when balance is denied for long enough, it takes balance by force. The man who is genuinely strong does not need rigid control because he is not suppressing anything that requires containing. He has met what is inside him, he has brought it into conscious relationship. He has found legitimate expression for what is real rather than performing the elimination of it. His discipline is not a dam holding back a flood. It is the natural expression of a man who knows what he values and lives in alignment with it, without constant effort and without constant vigilance. Against himself. Here is the third truth: a masculine man does not need anything from you. Not your approval, not your validation. Not your respect or your admiration or your agreement with his choices. He does not adjust his presentation based on what the room needs him to be. He does not become more confident when he is praised or less certain when he is criticized. His sense of who he is does not depend on external confirmation because it is not built from external materials. Jung called this psychological wholeness, the state in which a man's identity is grounded in the self, not the ego, not the social self. Not the performed version that manages external impressions, but the actual interior reality of who he is. When a man is grounded in the self, he cannot be destabilized by what other people think of him, because what other people think of him is simply not the foundation he is standing on. He hears it, he considers it honestly, he updates when it is accurate. And then he returns to the ground he is actually standing on, which is his own examined, owned, consciously inhabited interior life. This is not arrogance. Arrogance is the performance of not needing approval by a man who desperately needs it. The man who loudly announces his indifference to what others think is usually the man most controlled by it. Genuine independence from external validation is quiet. It does not announce itself, it simply is. In the stillness of a man who has nothing to prove, because he has already proven it to himself. In the calm of a man who can disappoint you without that disappointment threatening his sense of who he is. In the steadiness of a man who is the same person in private that he is in public, because he has no public version, he only has himself. There was a man in his early 40s who by every external measurement had constructed the most impressive version of the man he was told to be. Successful, disciplined, respected, the kind of man that younger men pointed to as evidence that the formula worked. He came not because his life was failing, because he had reached the top of the construction and found nothing there, not emptiness exactly. The specific hollowness of a man who has achieved everything and discovered that none of it was actually his. That the life he had built was built to specifications written by someone else. That he had spent 20 years becoming a man he never consciously chose to become. The work was not to tear down what he had built. It was to find out who was underneath it. To ask for the first time, not what have I achieved, but what do I actually value? Not what have I become, but what am I actually? Not what does the world see when it looks at me, but what do I see when I look without the performance? That process is what Jung called individuation, the movement toward the actual self as distinct from the constructed one. And the man who comes out of that process is not weaker than the man who went in. He is unrecognizable to the people who only knew the construction. Because the construction was impressive, but the man underneath it is something else entirely. He is real, and real even when it is quieter than the construction, even when it is less decorated and less celebrated and less immediately recognizable as successful, is the only thing worth being. What actually makes a masculine man is not what you were told. It is not the discipline. It is not the stoic performance of invulnerability. It is not the suppression of everything inconvenient or vulnerable or dark. It is not the achievement or the status or the ability to dominate the room without raising your voice. It is self-knowledge, complete, uncomfortable, ongoing, the specific willingness to look at everything you are, not just the parts that are presentable, and to own it all. The darkness and the light, the strength and the wound, the performed version and the actual one underneath it. The man who knows himself cannot be controlled, cannot be manipulated into performing for approval he does not need, cannot be destabilized by criticism that does not match his own honest assessment of himself, cannot be operated by the shadow he has already met and examined and integrated. He is not the loudest man in the room. He is not the most decorated or the most admired or the most visibly powerful. But he is the one whose presence changes the temperature of the room without a word being spoken. Because genuine masculine energy, the real thing, not the performance of it, is not loud, it is heavy. In the specific way that something becomes heavy when it is solid all the way through. No hollow parts, no maintained performance. No distance between what is presented and what is real. Just a man fully inhabiting himself, finally. That is what actually makes a masculine man. And it has nothing to do with anything you were taught.